I've done this group and this group and this group. So now I'm going to do this group. It looks like I made a mistake. I should have fitted this one before I fitted the FT chip, because now it's going to be a bit hard to get in here. These 0.1 UFs are already fitted, so I think I'll put these on next. And they are 47 puff. My DMM wouldn't read this for some reason. I had to do the solder the pad first method because there wasn't enough room to get the tip in behind the cap. Two 47 picofarad caps. Okay, we've done those two, so we'll tick them off. 47 puff. Now we're down to this one. 4700 puff. Puff. 4700. 4.7 nano. 4.86 nanofarad. Quick spin of the board to do the other side. A quick touch up. That's the 4.7 nano or the 4700 puff. Tick that off. The next one is this one. 4.7 micro. 3 of them. 4.3 mic is about 8% out, but that's within the allowable tolerance of the part. That joint looks too dry. To fix it, you have to remove the solder from the pad and part, or it'll come back again. I wicked it and grabbed another part because I have 100 to spare. Spin the board to get to the other side. 1, 2, and 3. That's our 3 4.7 microfarads, so we tick that off. That finishes this group except for these large parts. Next will be this clump. I'm going to start with this one here, the SN65H. SN65H VD230, but this part says VP230, so I hope it's the same. Align notch to the line. There was no room for a clip, so I just held it and swiped. A quick spin. Spin it back and a couple touch-ups. Okay, we tick that off. The only one missing in this area now is this one. 120 ohm resistor. 120R. That's the 120 ohm. Tick that off. And that's this clump done. This looks like a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, but I think it's best to go for this one first. The Max 9926 must be a VR. On second thoughts, I won't be able to get to these two, but with this area open I will be able to get to this side on the Max. So I'll do this one next. 1000 puff. 1000 puff is 1 nano. That's 1.1 nanofarads. 1000 puff. 2 1000 puff. That's our 2 1 nanos. Next is this one. I'll have to put this single one on first and then do the Max and then put the others on after. So it's a 5k resistor. 5k is not common, but 5.1 is, and it's only 2% out. Okay, we have our single 5.1k resistor in. Now we have to put this Max in, and pin number 1 is over here. Thankfully this Max chip has a mark on it, but oddly enough there's no mark on the silkscreen, unless that via is hiding a break in the silkscreen line. Flux the pads. The clip wouldn't reach, so I held it, and because of the fine pitch it's blobbered on and wicked off. In the end I couldn't wick it out with that 5k in the way, so I removed it. Okay, we had to remove our 5.1K and we fitted our max 9926, so we can tick that off. And then do these 5.1Ks. I think you have to do these two first, then this one here, then this one here, then that one, but we'll see how we go. There's actually a lot more room than the iBomb suggests, so it wasn't that hard to solder. I just had to put the 5K1 resistor on that I took off first, then after that it was a snap. 9 resistors on a 20 bandolier means I threw away the removed one and fitted 10. So those 10 5K resistors are finished. And the last component is this thing, 10 microfarads. I don't know if it was the part or the digital multimeter reading wrong, but they all seemed a bit low. I used another one that read 8.7 microfarad. VR section done. We tick off our 10 micro, one off, and let's see what's missing. 1 meg. Actually I wouldn't have missed it because it was the only part left in our to be fitted box. Okay, we tick off our 1 meg. Is there anything else that's missing? Connectors, jumpers, test, OP driver, we fitted them, USB, micro. So I guess we'll fit the USB and the micro SD card connector. The first problem is the USB pins are as long as the USB pads. So we can't put solder on the pads and let it wick under. Not that there's enough room to get the tip in there anyway. So I'm going to pre-solder the pads first and pre-solder the connector pins and sweat them together with the iron on top of the pins. I'll have to check continuity afterwards because I can't see if the pins are actually connected. Don't forget the flux because it transfers heat a lot better. The pins are easily accessible, but it's a very fine pitch, so you might have to wick some away. Next was the connectors, and they turned out to be the hardest part to solder on this whole thing. The iBomb shows a number of different smaller sized headers, but the cheapest and easiest is to just cut down some 2x40 header strips to what you need. Then place it into something that's going to hold them at the correct width, like the discovery board or some perf board. I didn't bother fully plugging it in because it's hard to get in and out, and then just flip the board and solder the corners. And this is where the problem started, because even with a bigger tip, the STM32 soldering iron just couldn't do a proper job. Basically there's too much thermal mass in the PCB and it sucks all the heat out of the solder and doesn't let it flow. In the end I had to grab my old 40-watt soldering iron, and even that struggled a bit. After tacking the corners and a few spots in the middle, I removed the discovery board to try to remove some thermal mass. In the end I had to solder one pin at a time in order, going up the row, then back down the other row, and keep repeating this up and down the row until the corner of the board got hot enough that it would flow into the solder joints properly. It's probably worth buying one of those $8 eBay 60-watt soldering irons just for this. You can tick off your mini USB and your micro SD card, plus these 7 connector headers. Next is all these little jumpers. If you look at the forum, not populated on this board, so I'm just going to leave them off for now. Then we come to all the connectors on the outside for inputs and outputs. I'm not going to fit mine because I'm going to directly solder wires and then make a plug that plugs into my adapter board, and that'll make it more universal. Next to these snubber diodes. This is optional diode flyback protection from inductors, like an injector coil. And if you look at the PCB new, it's these running across here. And if you look at the connections, they're just a diode from an output pin to the ground. I'm going to leave mine off, but you can fit them later if you need them. I've checked all the placed parts and all the ones I'm not going to fit, so I'd say the top is finished. Now we have to look at the bottom. We have our snubbers, but we also have these two resistors. This one's optional, and this one's OR, which I don't know what that means. Here it says option for ignition driver, but I'm going to leave it off because it seems to be triggering off the injector, and none of the other injectors have it. If something doesn't work, I'll look into it. Next is the task of thoroughly checking every single joint.